It's me again, January 1st, just a few minutes after I took that last video, using my handy dandy little remote to start the video, or to take pictures. Okay, so Bob has asked me to get on the camera a little more often myself, and I said, okay. I'm a little, I wouldn't call it camera shy, but maybe a small aversion to being on camera, but I thought I'd go ahead and try this out. Yeah, so what's it been like in France? It's been amazing. You know, it's an entirely different culture than even from my experience before. So I was here 6 years ago with Bob, and staying here as well with our friends Monia and Philippe. Since then, Philippe has passed away. It's almost been 6 years as well. And it was my intention 3 years ago to come for a visit with Monia and Sophia, her daughter, and now Natasha, who I've now met. And but then COVID hit, and I wasn't able to do that shortly after my retirement, which was the plan. So now, 6 years later, I'm here, and it's beautiful as always. Being by so close to La Mer, which is out that direction, and we won't be able to see it because on a sunny day you can see it really clearly because the shimmer of the water. But this morning it's a little cooler today at plus 11, 12, and I think it's only going to go up to 15 today, whereas yesterday I think we were up to 20. And that was New Year's Eve, so we had a beautiful day. But it's very beautiful here in every aspect. It's misty this morning, quiet. People are, I think, lingering a little bit because it's a holiday. Very hard-working people here. People are very busy and live, in my opinion, at a level of intensity that I would find difficult to sustain. You know, when they talk about French passion, I think these people have written the book on it. I mean, I'm certainly not well worldly traveled, but there is a joyful, there's a joyful sort of intensity here, and certainly a love for life, you know, and yeah, they're awake, you know, they're very much heartfelt, you know, very instinctual as well, very intuitive. I'm finding in my experience. So I don't have a grasp of, you know, I have a baby grasp, like baby talk, French, and then some people also have probably a similar level to me in English, so we get by, but I'm really relying on the theory that, you know, our body language is certainly our major language, and that is certainly the case because I think we mime, pantomime, or, you know, play charades quite a bit to get our message across, because it's moving very rapidly, you know. I think you know, my commitment is to keep working on the language, so that when I return, and that is the hope, the plan, is when I return one day for another lengthy visit like this, that I'll be able to be more involved in the conversations. I would say that depending on the subject, depending on the people and their articulation of the language, whether it's slower, I could say definitely when people are speaking the French language more deliberately, slower. Like a gentleman I met last night, he's a former lawyer, a lawyer, and his articulation is slow. We can call it slower, but more paced, and I could capture a lot more comprehend a lot more of what he was talking about. And yet when, it's wonderful just to be in this raging kind of river. It's just so wonderful when, the style of speaking, and I was able to speak to this subject, but the style of speaking is people, there's one collective conversation that's happening. So unlike in Canada, and I'm not saying we do this perfectly either, but when one person is speaking, another person is listening and responding, and even perhaps paraphrasing, am I hearing you correctly? Did you say this or that? I'm not certain. I don't have the language to be certain if that is also the case happening in the French language. But basically there's this flow, a river of conversation and concepts that people will speak. And we would in my Western perspective, certainly in an Indigenous perspective, that might be considered unruly, unmanageable. But it is fascinating. It's so interesting, and yet people feel heard and understood, I think. So, yeah, that's one of the major differences that I'm noticing. Okay, before this gets too long, my apologies. Désolé. I'll just cut this off right at this point. Okay.